Welcome to today's episode of Voices for Care, where we're excited to have Amanda Worms, a dedicated childcare operator from British Columbia, joining us. Amanda oversees care for over 400 families and is deeply passionate about ensuring that all families, especially low-income and single parents, have access to high-quality, inclusive childcare. Amanda has first-hand experience navigating the challenges of the $10 a day program in her province. She's seen the unintended consequences unfold, from the severe underfunding that has impacted the quality of care to the overwhelming red tape and bureaucracy that slows down the opening of new centres. As the federal government continues to prioritize politics and ideology over the well-being of families and children, Amanda has watched parents lose both choice and access to the care they deserve. Today, she'll share her insights, experiences, and her commitment to advocating for a better future for childcare in Canada. I am so grateful for Amanda being here today to talk to us about childcare in BC and about the $10 a day program in her province, how it's working, and just all of the joys and challenges of being part of childcare under a national childcare program. So hi Amanda, thank you so much for doing this.
No problem, Crystal. Thank you so much for having me. Do you want me to just introduce myself?
Yeah, just tell me who you are, share a bit about yourself.
Sorry.
That's okay. This is the life of childcare, right? The journey.
Yeah.
Yes,
you go into the center once and then that's it.
Exactly. It's not all glamour.
Yeah, it's really not. I'm Amanda Worms. I am the owner and operator of Little Owl Academy Limited operating out of Kelowna, BC. As well, I am the executive director and founder of Elowin, which is our nonprofit partners that we work with. And I have been watching the CWELC and 10-a-day plan come together for the last almost 9 years. Just the beginning happening in 2017 when this was all brought forward within our province in BC, all the way to now where we have the implementation of the CCFRI and their wage enhancement and a little bit of a boost to the affordable childcare benefits. So in BC, we have 4 different streams that are coming from CWELC. And we used to, when we first kind of came onto the scene in 2011, up until 2018, private providers as well as not-for-profits and charities were able to apply to have new spaces funding, that kind of thing. But I believe it's in 2021 they eliminated that, so that it can only be not-for-profit moving. Actually, that might have even been 2019 that they did that. I'll have to check that, but yeah. So we definitely we're at a place now where the CCFRI accounts for at least half of the fees if you are a part of it. And unfortunately, if you want to offer the wage enhancement, which is about $6 an hour for your educators, you must be a part of the CCFRI. In the beginning, that wasn't so difficult. We were able to kind of move forward with that easily enough. But of course, your educators get very comfortable with that added wage, and it's well worth it to see them, getting to those wage levels that a lot of the time were very, very difficult, solely dependent on parent fees. So, fast forward to 2020, 2021, they started to really limit fees and create some pretty big challenges with the operations and being able to kind of function. Then, of course, COVID. So everything kind of came to a halt at that point. And really from there, it's just gotten harder and harder. I began working with another group of providers here in BC, not-for-profits, family childcare, group childcare, all walks of life. And we created the BC Childcare Professionals Association and started to advocate for the challenges that some of the limitations were causing post-COVID with some low enrollment. And then just, at this point now, we're seeing a significant decrease in interest in the 3 to 5 category. and an unmanageable interest in the infant toddler category.
Wow.
It's been really challenging, and unfortunately the data that is collected that I believe is directing a lot of these decisions is not accurate to how a lot of providers offer care, because they're only asking for very basic service type questions, when a lot of us have heavily invested in the education of educators and certain philosophy, and having those higher quality expectations, which is impossible under the current model at this point.
Absolutely. I think that's been like one of the biggest topics that seems to keep coming up. Like when we've talked, and we're both part of the National Committee on Childcare Reform, talking to operators across the whole country, the concern for quality. I know in the media, in some of the other, more lobbyist type associations that are out there, it's really easy to kind of throw back on for-profit private operators, like, oh, you're always just concerned about that bottom line, making the profit, all of those things. And I know we've spoken a lot, and we've been in these large groups of private operators, and that never comes up once. I have not heard a private operator in our discussions say that. It's always, the concern for quality under this, and the concern for the children in this national program. Like, you really don't hear much politically about the impact this is actually having and going to have long term, right? So
Yes. That is the biggest challenge for sure, because the understanding is not there. We started the not-for-profit in 2018 specifically because I wanted to ensure that what we were doing in terms of quality and the philosophy and the work that we had started to create within our childcare community, that we were going to be able to be here long term. And for me, it's a business model. It's just a name. It's not, when you're in childcare, you don't have tangible assets most of the time, unless you have many buildings, which I don't know any of us that own our really expensive commercial spaces. If that was the case, things would be easier.
Yes, very much so.
But that's not the case, and we're trying to fill needs in communities. And generally speaking, you're sticking your neck out there to do that. And so for me, creating the not-for-profit, I also was curious to understand the kind of rhetoric that was going about not-for-profit versus, independent, as you'd like to call it, childcare. And the challenges are exactly the same. You have a lack of funding, or you don't have enough qualified teachers, or your hours aren't long enough. Like, it makes no difference. And the mentality that there's a wiggle room or like a profit margin. I've never even looked at a profit margin in the last 8 years, because it's just like, can we pay our people? Can we pay our lease? What can we replace? Because we know how hard it is to have 25 3-year-olds, cruising around a space. I'm sure most parents can appreciate what it looks like to keep those spaces maintained. And so, especially if you care about that quality piece, you're always going to be, pushing to that next level. And in BC, not like a lot of areas across Canada where there actually is accreditation standards, in BC, we have the basic licensing regulations. Your license is dependent on those basic regulations. They are not best practice. They are below, like they are the minimum. And so when we're looking at quality, if that is the only thing that you have in place to measure quality, that any center that has an active license should have the same quality. So, we just kind of dove into it a little bit deeper and tried to understand the kind of mentality. And you know what, there is a lot of benefits to being a not-for-profit for the, they don't have to pay employer health tax, but the private company does, and it's very costly. And that all came in at the same time as fee cap. So It's been kind of like just shot after shot of trying to come up with like another $30,000 that year,
Yeah,
when you don't have it.
exactly. I know what we see a lot of in Alberta now that, the free market is gone under this national program is people are pivoting to a nonprofit model. Doesn't mean that they aren't owning other centers that are for profit, but the only way to access this program freely and be able to provide, like you said, the wage enhancements for Alberta, we have it looped into our low income subsidy as well. So if you're not part of that, you can't offer subsidy for low income families. It's really like a noose, right, around your neck with this program here. But we have found that it's mostly these new nonprofit spaces that are being so celebrated as an accomplishment of this $10 day are coming from private investment that would have paid for them themselves if this wasn't
Well,
restricted, right?
that was the other thing too that I was really, really kind of frustrated with as a taxpayer was that, when we received our new spaces grant, which we wrote one in 2020, we were funded at the end of February, and within 3 weeks after we've signed our lease and got everything situated, COVID happens. And we were just like, OMG, how are we going to do this? Everything was so uncertain. And I called and I was like, so can I return it? Like, I don't know if this is going to fly. And they were like, well, no. We're like, okay. So we continued. And we had another center in town that was funded the same year. It's still not open. We've been operating fully for 4 years in October.
Yeah.
So we are seeing kind of that really long time it's taking for this money to become spaces. But when you have somebody who's industrious, you're seeing that happen a lot faster.
Yeah.
And so, the other thing too was that the same spaces that I built with the new spaces fund, I could have built at probably a third of the cost. And I have built centers for that because of, being able to use people that that are tradespeople and all of that kind of stuff. And when you do it through a grant, and rightfully so, absolutely this needs to be in there, you can't.
Yeah.
So then what happens is that it actually ends up costing taxpayers a lot more to build that space because there's nobody who's funding it to make sure that the expenses stay online. Like there's so many there's so many reasons why it's cheaper to build spaces independently. But again, you can't, in a lot of provinces, that has been a no-go. And in BC, that has not happened. We can still get a license, but you are, everybody is very cautious. Like very few people really want to build spaces right now because it's not, there isn't as much need.
Yeah.
And there's not enough educators.
No.
Very risky.
Very risky. I mean, you're totally dependent on your educators, right? We're all regulated, like you said, and I feel that your quality really is in the educators you have in your center. So finding those people that align with the values of your center, but also, are quality and have all the training and all that thing is sometimes like finding a unicorn. I have to say, like, my center's in a rural community and it's always been a struggle, but since this program and actually since COVID, I think a lot of educators left. And it's really hard to get them back in or attracting people back into this field. And, I think that's something, again, with this program. We had a federal government that doesn't know anything about childcare, didn't engage with operators, and rolls this out without a staffing plan in place to support all these new spaces. I mean, we couldn't fill the spaces in a lot of our centers before this because we didn't have staff, not because we didn't have kids, but we didn't actually have the staff in place to support those children. And then you open up this affordable program and everyone floods in for childcare and there's no staff it's just a mess.
And I think that there's been a lot of unintended consequences too. Like when you look at it from the perspective of like for example, we were chatting a little earlier about like preschool spaces and like our junior K spaces. So they're like a slightly shorter day, great for parents that are on mat leave that want to have like a 6 hour day without their, 3-year-old while they're at home with a new baby. And predominantly before, we never had a problem turning people over where you would, they would go out on mat leave and they're coming out of an IT space and a new mom is coming in. And then by the time this mom is pregnant with her second, this mom's coming back. And it almost always worked that way very like easily. But now what we're finding is that because it's so cheap, a lot of affluent families are choosing to use full day childcare while they're off on mat leave. So now the junior K and preschool programs that are the only place that we can get any help to replace resources and all of that, like the little bits of revenue you get there, is gone. And our wait lists are even longer because nobody is taking their children out of care anymore at all. And like in BC, you're not eligible for affordable childcare benefit when you're on mat leave, but they are eligible for the childcare fee reduction initiative, which is funded through the CWELC. Yeah. So it's creating like a significant difficulty in trying to get those families that everybody's talking about back to work. Yeah. That's a new one that I'm noticing. Yeah. I mean, obviously it takes time to kind of see the implications of decisions, but I mean, there at every turn, it's impacting children. And I think that is what we need to start focusing on, because it has nothing to do with the money. It has nothing to do with, all of these imaginary, fictitious reasoning behind quality. Yeah. And like, have you ever seen a public system that was better quality than a private system? No, I haven't, but whatever, that's fine. Yeah. I don't know. Cool.
I often wonder with this research when the last time these people who are writing this have ever visited a childcare center for more than a photo op. Like come in and actually tour the centers and meet the private operators like us who offer this and talk to us. I mean, I think, there is a place for all types of childcare. I'm a big supporter of choice in this realm.
Absolutely.
And I think that, there's always motivation. Like I can only speak for myself, but we talked about this before too. You mentioned about mortgaging your house. My house was, when we signed our lease for our commercial space, we had to put our personal guarantee on the line of our house, our savings, everything. I mean, there's no more motivation to make it work and to make sure that you are competitive and providing quality so that parents continue to use your services than having your family home tied to your business, right?
Absolutely. And I stood in front of Sharon Gregson and I cried at a meeting earlier this year. There's a photo circulating on the interwebs that I'd be happy to share with you. And I said that exact thing to her. I said, can you please tell me why you believe that my family and what we've put on the line is less important than, the auspice of care? Mm-hmm. Like, why does that matter? And the funny thing is, every single time we get a new childcare minister, and I've managed to get 2 of them up to my centers, I swear they get replaced 2 months later. And it's so frustrating because we're working really hard. And the one thing that we do have in BC is the BC Early Learning Framework. And that is an incredibly difficult document to work with. And it is what we're supposed to be guiding our childcare practices on. And it's not possible within the limitations that have been placed on facilities unless somebody is willing to, invest and invest and invest, which is exactly what we've done. And we've come a long, long way. And it's important that we, stand up for the children. Mm-hmm. And recognize that when we're opening a dime a dozen spaces and we're flooding them with people who were not educated here, or we're not educated in, which province they're coming from and all of that type of stuff, it creates a significant impact. And when we are allowing for such a big churn of employees every single time an employee leaves a childcare center, there's an impact to the children in that classroom. And those
Absolutely.
decisions are hard.
Yeah.
It always comes back to the children. And for me, like, I would rather not operate. If I have to be brought down to the bare minimum standard to be able to survive financially, I would rather close.
Yeah. I think that's
And I
for
think that
most of
that's
us.
what they're hoping for.
Yeah, it feels that way, doesn't it? So that you're like, you really are left with no options, right? And I know we were having a major discussion about this with our board this week about like the quantity over quality model that's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that again, like it's another unintended consequence. You know, you have a federal system that has essentially forced these quotas on provinces, space creation quotas, right? Which are completely unrealistic in Alberta anyway. Like 62,000 spaces, we're at like 9,000. I mean, just ridiculous numbers here. And I think that pressure to create spaces without, again, the infrastructure and support for these new operators coming in, our licensing bodies here are just so overworked and there's just not enough people. And, you know I've talked to a licensing officer recently who has 46 centers on her caseload from like all of Southern Alberta. How is that even realistic? Like, why is
Our
that?
licensing officer too said that just last week. She says she's got 90 something, 93.
It's
And
insane.
she works 4 days a week. She's like, there's no way that we can, like, it's crazy what's happening. She said that they are licensing like all of these
Mhm.
spaces and there's no way that they can check in on them.
Yeah.
And she said, for centers like yours, where we know like you are always reporting as you need to, like you're lower risk, like it's creating a gap, a significant gap to the fields and to the children and to parents who think that they're putting their children into licensed care. Well, yeah, it gets inspected once a year, but like, what's the protocol of the center? What's the protocol of the staff? Do they have sufficient staff to even be able to execute the protocols that are expected? You don't know. It's just once a year you're checking, right? Like, it's a problem. And it impacts children. Again, every single one of these decisions impacts children. And that is not okay at all in my world. Like, I am here for children.
Yeah.
Children before parents, children before ECEs. I'm here for them. We have to do our best for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. This program has completely, I would say, let the children down, because even if we were able to somehow fix all of these unintended consequences in the next whatever 2 years, 18 months of this program before it ends, there's going to be so many, I feel like so many long-term repercussions. I know
Yes.
with even the preschool component here, preschools in Alberta are really being impacted because you can't just and get a daycare license. If you have a preschool license and you usually don't have an allocated outdoor space, there's different size requirements and things because children are in your care for a lot shorter of a term than a daycare day.
Yeah.
So it's different. You can't just go and say, I'm going to become a daycare now because that's what's funded under CWELC. And so we're seeing preschool programs that really have a need in learning as well as daycare being closed because they can't stay open under this. Their parents cannot afford a preschool program when they can go to daycare for $200 a month full time, like you said, and they can leave their kids all day. It's ridiculous, right? And I know here we're seeing that children aren't even going to kindergarten because the kindergarten programs in Alberta are half days. And so parents have to pay more for that extra like kinder care after school or out of school care, which is not covered by CWELC, than they do full-time daycare. So they're leaving their children in full-time daycare. And what is that going to look like for grade one? Like, how do you transition from a daycare world to a school world in grade one? Like, it's just, to me, the social emotional impact of that alone is going to be really difficult for teachers, for schools to handle those children, but also for those children. We're not setting anybody up for success with that transition.
No, definitely not. I mean, for here, we have full days, but it's crazy now the difference between, infant toddler care and then, you transition them into 3 to 5 and it gets more expensive, and then you transition them into out of school care, it gets more expensive.
Yeah.
It used to be the opposite.
Yeah.
As your child aged,
Yeah.
it got cheaper. And so, it's creating this like significantly negative impact, because now a lot of families can't afford to pay for out of school care. So now we have people that are like, on the moms groups, hey, can somebody walk my kid home? They're 6. Like they can't even afford to do that. And we're just sitting here going like, I don't know how to explain to you that it's cheaper. It doesn't make sense to us.
No.
Like even our part-time days, like because part-time is slightly more expensive, you're ending up with part-time care being more expensive than full-time care.
Yeah.
So parents are panicked.
Yeah.
And and then you also have families that are taking full-time spaces that don't need them because of that. So then you have open spaces and you never know when people are going to show up.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of nuances that probably could have been addressed had consultation happened.
Yeah, and I think had the intention behind this program been to actually support children where they're at and where parents at and where their values are for childcare, instead of to support an ideology and politics behind something. Because I really in my heart feel that this is all a political campaign, this program, more so than it is to actually care for the children and provide quality childcare for Canada. I think that I don't know. I think we're into this. I hope we can, make some changes. I feel like one of the positives has been this community of us, of our
Absolutely.
associations coming together, provinces talking to each other, because in Alberta, we would be bringing concerns forward about CWELC, and we would be told, well, I don't know why you guys are so unhappy or why you're saying this, because BC's loving it and it's so amazing in BC, or Ontario is, just living their best life under CWELC. And then now I can text you and be like, hey, heard this is working out amazing for you guys in BC. And we can talk to each other and, figure out where we're all at, because we're all in the same place. Doesn't matter what province. People are struggling
Exactly.
under this, and parents don't have access to their choice in childcare, or, they can't get in. There's this whole quantity over quality issue that's starting to present itself. There's underfunding. I mean, for you, what do you think your biggest, like if you could change one thing about CWELC moving forward, what would it be? What would you fix with like the magic wand right now?
I honestly feel like they need to establish basic core service. And anything that it costs over and above that needs to be looked at separately. I think that like realistically, it should not matter whether you're for profit or not for profit, whether you can access the savings for your families and the wages for your educators. That is something that I think needs to be spread out. We have to maintain the spaces that we have in order to meet any of the targets that have been set. And so, that is a big one. And we can't be creating financial burden by not allowing people to cover their costs.
Yeah.
And the cost of care that their parents are comfortable with. Like, I agree that people should not be charging obscene amounts at all. Yeah. They should be trying. And you know what? Back in the day, when I was just consulting for friends of mine in the childcare field who owned centers, they never increased fees more than like, $5-10. And it was like every 4 or 5 years. Now, because you're limited as to what you can increase, you are forced to increase every single year.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what the next year is going to hold, because it is that scary.
Exactly. Yeah.
They have created so much fear in this field. It's devastating to see what people have gone through on the social emotional level of this. It is significant. And it's just like the pieces of, like you have leases, like I said, like you were saying earlier, I've got 3 that I've had to personally guarantee. There is no chance that I will ever survive that.
No.
My family will lose everything. if I can't operate? And my leases that were signed for 10 and 15 years, because my consistency and stability within this field is so important for me, that I signed these long lease agreements. And now I have no idea if I will ever be able to pay agreements that I've already signed. And I had no idea that this would be a problem. So what are we doing? How are people going to address that in those situations?
I don't know. I know we're in the same boat here. We have a provincial agreement that expires in the spring. Like, I, on my desk beside me, have my new lease that I'm to sign by the end of tomorrow for my center, another long-term, like you're saying, long-term lease. And I don't even know what my agreement for the province as a childcare operator is going to look like for after April 1st. Like, how do you
And
make
that's
a business
exactly what
decision?
happens every single year for us.
Yeah.
You go and you apply and you hope and you cross your fingers and you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait. And hopefully,
Yeah.
you know, and people have made business decisions prior to things being even solidified within the agreements that are creating problems that, you know,
Yeah.
it is the only thing it's the only time that I've ever seen businesses in this kind of respect to be put into a position where they really have no idea.
No,
And it's now starting to impact our ability to even borrow money to try to survive.
totally. And secure leases, because I know I've
Yeah.
heard from other people in our association whose landlords are like, yeah, we're not sure we want to sign leases with childcare right now. Like, I mean, I don't think there's any other business that is going to be in the same situation with this. Like, I can't even imagine other industries being taken over in this capacity by the federal government. Like, and
Well, especially when it's totally outside of their jurisdiction too. Like
yeah,
that's just wild. Well, I mean, it's not really wild to me. We've seen what's happened over the last, 9 years.
yeah.
And like, I just like the fake feminist policies are real
Oh man,
fun.
don't even get me started on how wonderful this is, the
So great.
social feminist policy that is, and it's also good economic policy we heard too. Don't you just,
Is it?
yeah, I love as a woman being told, a woman who actually has invested in this space, created these spaces like you did with your own risk, and has successfully had a viable center that is well respected, well
Mm-hmm.
recognized. Parents choose our centers because they used to have choice in childcare, and there used to be competition that would regulate quality and all of the things,
It
right? And
sure would.
but to have someone who doesn't know, be toting this policy, this $10 a day policy as good social feminist policy is absolutely like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And it's so insulting. It's so insulting. That's all I can say.
As a teen mom, when I went into the teen parenting program that I was in 2002, ooh, it was a while ago now. I first heard of the 10 a day plan, and I was a really big fan of it. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. And it does.
Mhm.
It does make sense to support families. It does make sense to fund childcare, but it does not make sense to take such a huge number of people and say that they're basically garbage
Yeah.
and that they're not welcome, and that the investment that they've made for like a lot of the women that I've been speaking to for the last 8 years through advocacy, these are women that were able to like overcome significant
Totally.
obstacles to do a thing that they were so passionate about. It gave them the opportunity as an ECE who has always been underpaid to create something a little bit more for themselves, right? And bad quality doesn't stay around. Parents talk. They do a great job of regulating quality.
Yeah. Unless they
And
have no choice, and then they
unless
take
they
whatever
have
they
no
can get.
choice. And
Yeah.
if you look on any of the moms' chats these days, when you see now they can post anonymously to be like, this is happening at my daycare center. I'm scared to say anything because if they kick me out, I am toast.
Yeah.
Like I'll lose my home. Like, is that what we want?
I had a quote from a parent this week about quality, and they said they would not have put their child in this childcare center if there wasn't wait lists on every other center, but they had no choice. They had to go back to work, and now there's incidents at this center where there's like risk to children and they don't know what to do because there's nowhere for them to go. And that is just, first of all, not good policy for anybody, but
No.
just not in the best interest of children at all.
Well, and to be put into the situation where you either choose to not feed the economy because it's good economic policy, remember,
Yes, right.
or the safety of your child.
Mm-hmm.
So are we worried about economic policy or the children? I think we know.
Yeah. And I
Like,
mean, you've put people in such an affordability crisis that most people, like your average people that need the affordable childcare, can't not go to work. They can't opt out of work because they need both incomes or three jobs to support their family now under, our inflation rates and all of the costs of living that have gone up so much.
yeah.
Just
Well,
like,
and it's interesting too, even just to see how they've rolled it out so differently across the provinces. And, I think BC is quiet, not because we're happy.
no.
We just know that everything that we have to say means nothing.
Yeah, that's kind of the feeling, isn't it? Like you're
Oh, 100%. Everybody is looking
villainized
for
if
an
you say
out.
something.
Like that's what it seems like.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not. I'm here. I'm here for the long haul because this is I had an epiphany about 3 years ago. I've been, toying with the idea, going back and forth, going like, am I crazy? Like, is this like the dumbest thing I've ever done to continue to, work so hard
Yeah.
and struggle so much? And like, I realized 3 years ago, I'm like, this is it. This is my passion. My passion is children. I want to see children being given a safe and nurturing space. And I can't save all children. I can't have them all in my centers. But I know that the impact that my educators and our teams can have on the 450 families we do have,
Yeah,
and that means something to me.
totally.
It means something to me because it's hard. I'm a mom, I'm neurodiverse, I have 3 neurodiverse children. I believe in inclusion, and like, I will advocate to the ends of the earth because I think that this is such an important piece, and parents have to have the ability to access care. And I don't want to be in a position where my facilities are not accessible to low income families, because that is the exact reason why I'm in this business in the first place. Because as a teen mom, it touched me so greatly that I was, propelled to a very different life than where I was headed.
Yeah.
Without that stability, without those ECEs who on those hard days kept me, calm. It's family care. It's
Totally.
so important, and that is what I will continue to really strive for.
I think that, what you give me goosebumps when you're talking about that. Like it's, I can feel your passion for what you're doing. And I think that that's what's brought us all together as a group, like from all the provinces. And I feel like we all are very much aligned in our passion and why we're here. It's not to make buckets of money.
No.
No. I hate to burst the bubble, but private childcare is not. Yeah. But it's
Yeah,
like you
the
said,
2 years during COVID when I had no income was a real
yes.
good time.
Oh man. Yeah. Oh, yes, living the dream, right?
Yeah.
But I think that I wish we had politicians that would listen to that part of it, and really advocate with us, make sure this program brings that to the children and families. It's shameful, I think, what's happening right now. And I am really optimistic. I feel like we're uniting as operators across the country, and I'm really optimistic that we can bring a voice for what we believe in and really start to bring some critical thinking to this as we move forward, right? And ask some questions, get parents thinking about this, because if the parents don't, advocate alongside us for these high quality programs, if they don't step up and realize where this is heading as well, it's not going to work, because I think we have a powerful voice, but we need the parents to understand too. And I hope we get there as an association.
I think, you know what, I think that when your heart is in the right place and your intention is, that of like coming from
Yeah.
a good intention, there's nothing that we can't do to get to that next space, which is really just an understanding. It's not even a we want you to recognize that we're like, better. It's like, no, we just want to participate.
Yeah.
We just want to support our communities just like you guys want to support our communities, so you say. So why would you not allow people who care that deeply enough to risk everything
Exactly.
that their family has to put forward care for years and years before any of this came up? Why wouldn't you want us to work with you? If you need things like accountability, that's not a problem. All of us are happy to do that because there's nothing to hide.
Yeah.
There's nothing to hide.
Yeah.
So, but they don't even ask for that, right? It's
No, and I think it's like this, I don't know, exclusion of some of us without really realizing that you're excluding all the families. Like, I think that's one of these things, right? Like, this money is the family money. It's not ours. We don't profit on this as operators. We're not compensated as it's written. We're reimbursed for reducing services so families can access these programs. So when you exclude my center or your center, you're actually excluding the families and the workers from these benefits. It's just so hypocritical, right?
Well, and that's the thing. And I'm honestly, I'm shocked in the other provinces that families haven't gotten all up in arms about that. Like, I'm actually surprised that families, like, that you guys don't wield a bigger stick, because like, I know for us, like, our families, we just won like 8 awards in Kelowna for our quality of care.
Yeah.
And we won like a bunch last year too. And we were honored in 2018 by the BC government for being innovative.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. You awarded us a new spaces grant.
Yeah.
And the not-for-profit is struggling like to stay afloat.
Yeah.
Without support,
Yeah.
which the support comes from
yes. Yeah.
us.
Yes, exactly.
Right? It's
yeah.
It's hard. It's a hard one, and it really is unfortunate that they continue to make changes without consultation.
Yeah. Even consultation with parents too, right?
Yes.
I
at
think
all.
It's coming though. I feel like parents are starting, at least, or maybe I'm just more aware of it because I'm always talking about this, but
Yeah.
I feel like parents are starting to see it. People are starting to become a bit more aware too on how tight they are for, how much they're paying in taxes. And then, I mean, if you're feeling the pinch because you're paying 43% of your income to taxes right now, how do you fund a national childcare program that's only nonprofit? Where does that money come from? Like, we need to start asking these questions because these programs sound amazing, but the funding has to come from somewhere, like the administration of them, the infrastructure, it all has to be aligned so it works. Otherwise, it's just a promise and here we are.
But we know that, like, you just look at the math, you reverse engineer the math with the numbers that they provide you, and it's like nowhere near enough money to cover even a very small portion.
Yeah.
So like, it's not even mathematically possible with the current amount of money. It doesn't make any sense. But like, we're doing great, but we're also funding spaces and leaving percentages of them open
Oh,
and openly, you know,
yeah.
talking about it. Like, it's crazy. And then we have these situations where we've got these large nonprofits that are taking all of the resource and referral contracts and creating such significant issues and red flags,
Yeah.
big red flags, because there's one thing this government's been good at, and that's funneling monies to charities.
Yeah, well, I know that there is a federal audit coming for CWELC from the Auditor General. So, I know that for me gives me some peace of mind that
That's nice.
is, yeah, because I mean, we're told as private operators that you always have to be accountable, right, for every penny of this program, all the public funds, and be responsible with it. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing the results of that. I have some feelings on what might be under there. And I appreciate that the Auditor General is willing to do this because I think that it's a substantial amount of Canadian taxpayer money and it probably is not being spent to the best of its ability, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've seen that myself. It's frustrating, and I'm hopeful that we can find a way forward that sees, all families and all children and all people willing to give their love and compassion and care to children as equal and valued, equally valued, really, at the end of the day. I mean, the one thing that I do want to say is another big unintended consequence, and we've seen this on a huge scale in Kelowna when a center, and a very large center, ended up closing down. And all of those families who had secured care and had been there for years and years and years got thrown right back into the dragon's den trying to find spaces. So now all of those families who previously had been able to go back to work are now in a situation where they're frantically having to search for any space to maintain their employment. And a lot of them weren't able to.
Yeah. And
right?
then,
So,
yeah, then what kind of risk are they at too? Because if you need childcare, it goes all back to that same loop we were talking about.
same thing, right back to the children.
Yeah, like, oh, it's, yeah, such a vicious cycle.
It really is.
We are hosting with our association and our national committee a parents forum coming up in September, and I
Nice.
know that I'm hoping you'll be there, but
I will.
know you'll be there, but I hope you'll be there. I know you're part of. We've been talking about this at the national committee, and yeah, I think more parent awareness is just going to be such a benefit for parents to really be active in this space and make decisions for their children. I know in Alberta, the wait lists are long, and most families, if you're just looking for childcare now, you're going to be probably getting a space once your child's aged out, like long after, right?
Yeah, it's true. And here we're just seeing a weird little blip with 3 to 5s, just like no 3-year-olds. Like, I know in Kelowna specifically, a lot of people are moving out of town. They can't afford to stay here.
Yeah.
With the Airbnbs,
Yeah.
we had Airbnbs shut down and all of that. And a lot of families were depending on that income to pay their mortgage through like a carriage house or whatever. And so we've had, I think, about 35 families totally leave Kelowna in the last 6 months.
Wow.
Like, absolutely crazy, the cost of living, and people are just in such a terrible space.
Wow, that's horrible.
It's awful.
Yeah. Is there anything else, like as we kind of wrap up, like, is there anything else that you want to put out there? If you could, maybe I'll just ask you this, if you could talk to our federal government, either, our Liberal government that put this program together and blessed us all with it, or any new government that might be coming in about this program, like what would you say, I guess, moving forward? What would you?
I would say that they need to be talking to people on the ground floor here, people on the front lines that have been, really staying open through COVID so that nurses and doctors and all of those people could get to work. And then immediately past COVID, were crushed.
Yeah.
like I would dare them to come into my spaces and tell me that I'm there for money and that they're low quality. I dare ya. Like, and I did that to 2 ministers in BC, and they both came, and then they both left that space really close after.
I know we
And
always invite politicians into our centers for more than a photo op, I say. Like, come in, like, actually
oh yeah, if they
put
want a
your
photo
boots on
op,
the
they're
ground.
coming in, or that's it.
Yeah.
You don't get to kiss
Get
babies here.
No, I'm with you. Well, I'm so grateful again for you for, meeting. I'm grateful that we met, and
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
grateful that you gave me your time today and that you're allowing me to share this story, your story, and your voice out there, because I think the more we can share about our own personal experiences and put our faces and voices to who we are in the private sector and who we are as childcare operators, maybe people will start to engage with us a little bit on the ground, and we can help be part of the system, right?
That would be lovely.
Oh,
I really
well,
do hope so.
me too. Well, thank you again so much. I'm just gonna
Yeah, no worries. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on today's journey through the heart of Canada's childcare sector. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a call to action that resonates with you. But our conversation doesn't end here. The quest for high-quality childcare is ongoing, and your voice is essential in this collective journey. Stay connected and continue to be part of this crucial dialogue by following Voices for Care on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe to receive updates on new episodes and share with friends and family to broaden our community of advocates. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of children and families across Canada. Don't forget to reach out via our social media channels with your thoughts, stories, and ideas for future episodes. Your input helps shape our mission and the future of childcare in our country. Until next time, keep raising your voice for care, because every child deserves a bright start and every parent is entitled to the choice and care for their family. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Voices for Care.